Hello and welcome to Open SQL with 7.4 and 7.5 version of ABAP with HANA database. This is a hands-on course using Eclipse ABAP development environment with HANA database as the backend, where we will start with basic understanding of Open SQL, how it is different from native SQL. Then we will see the basic usage of select, insert, update, modify, and delete statements. After that, we will see multiple variation of select and start with the basic usage of select and select. Then we will see select single up to n rows, use of db count and sub rc in your select queries. You will also see there are a lot of new inline table syntax which we use to reduce number of lines of code as per new ABAP syntax. You will also see how to select data in case you have custom structure and use different ways in which mapping can be done with OpenSQL, may it be using the corresponding fields of or using the ABAP corresponding and mapping feature provided with the 7.4 and 7.5 updates. After that, we will see how to make selection generic with where clause and use the for all entries, corresponding fields of table and range tables, what are the scenarios where they should be used, and what are the limitations which they have. You will also see how to use aggregation function to get aggregated value in columns. So how to use average, minimum, maximum, distinct. We will see those aggregation function with the use of group by and order by. Finally, in the advanced part, we will see the use of subqueries, joins. Both in theory and practice, we will cover left outer join, right outer join, and cross join. We will also do a deep dive in a SQL expression, may it be arithmetic SQL expression, string SQL expression, and use of case and code scheme. Finally, we will see how to use path expression with OpenSQL utilizing our CDS view and association related to the CDS view. So this course will cover OpenSQL with new ABAP version on HANA in a 360-degree perspective, and we hope this course will be useful for you in your projects. So join this useful course where we will cover OpenSQL in 360-degree with the new syntax of ABAP with the SAP HANA database as the backend. My name is Ajay Naik and I will see you in this course. Hello and welcome to Open SQL section in ABAP. Now, when we talk about Open SQL statements can be utilized within your ABAP code. And when you use this Open SQL statements, they will be referring to ABAP data dictionary for the information of structures, and they can be executed on different types of databases. So the OpenSQL statement are not database dependent, and you can have your SAP HANA database, or you can also have your Oracle database, or you can also have your Sybase database, and you don't have to write different statements within your ABAP code to be executed within different database. The same OpenSQL statements can be executed on different database. Now, based on where your data is stored, you will be having those database, and the same OpenSQL statement within your ABAP can be executed independently of what kind of database is getting used in the background. Now, how it is done? Now, there is a component called DBSL, and this DBSL converts Open SQL code into the native SQL code, and these modules are called DBSL, and different database have different DBSL or these different libraries. And if you have SAP HANA running as a database in the background, then your Open SQL statement will be converted into HANA native SQL statement. And this DBSL modules are specific to the database. So if you are having a HANA database running in the background, so the DBSL module will be of that HANA database. So it converts the Open SQL into the HANA native SQL. And similarly, if you have other database, then you also need that specific DBSL or database specific libraries to convert the Open SQL into native SQL. Now, as a developer, you will be working mostly within the ABAP layer, and you will be writing your OpenSQL code, which will be also be able to run cross database, or will be able to run on different type of database. Okay, we will go into one level deeper now and explore this architecture of OpenSQL and how internally when you write an OpenSQL will be treated or how it will be executed. Now, when you write your OpenSQL within your ABAP code, it is present in your ABAP layer or your application layer, and these directly talk to the database interface. Now, the database interface here acts as a bridge between your application layer and your database server. And this database interface, also short for DBI, provides you the capability to buffer certain data so that your program can access data from the table buffer directly instead of going into the database, which will take longer time compared to accessing it from table buffer. So certain data are temporarily stored in the table buffers so that program are faster. Also, the table buffer requires the table buffer setting to be switched on, and we will see in your SQL statements also that what are the statements which allows table buffering and what are the statement which when you use will bypass this table buffering. So also this thing is statement dependent, but in general buffering the table allows a faster access of the data, which speeds up the performance of your code as well. Now here, after the database interface, you also have this database specific libraries which convert the OpenSQL into native SQL, and the native SQL pass this native SQL statements to the database where the data extraction or it can be updation, deletion based on the nature of the statement, those statements are executed. Okay, so this is about the OpenSQL architecture. Now there is also one more way of writing SQL statement within your ABAP code, which you might have also heard, which is of directly writing native SQLs. Now, when you directly write the native SQL statement within your ABAP code, which is in your ABAP layer or your application layer, you are writing these native SQL statements, then it need not to be converted again in the native SQL. You are directly going to send those native SQL statement into the native SQL layer, which will execute those statement in your database. So this statement will be executed in the database and you don't have the multiple layers of conversion as we have in the OpenSQL, the conversion from a OpenSQL into the native SQL. And one more thing is that because OpenSQL, as we already just discussed, is database independent, but the native SQL which you write in your code is specific to a database, or you can say is database dependent. Okay, so these are some of the minute difference which you can pick from the architecture overview, but let's also discuss what are the difference as a developer you will find and which one to pick in which case. So this is the first difference which we just discussed, that the OpenSQL statements are database independent and you can have the same statement run in different database, but the native SQL statements are database dependent. Now the second thing which you have is in your OpenSQL you don't have capability of DDL, which is data definition language. So I cannot use OpenSQL and have certain statement to create a table. So I cannot have creating a table which is basically a structure within the database. I cannot have those statement, or I don't have that statement capability to create a table or to alter the table structure. So these capability we don't have within the OpenSQL, but in the native SQL I have the capability to create a table within the database or to alter its structure within the database. So that is one additional benefit what you have with native SQL. You have the DDL capabilities, which is data definition language, also present within the native SQL, but those are not present within the OpenSQL. So with OpenSQL, you cannot create a table within the database or alter the structure of that particular table. Now with OpenSQL, we also have the capability of buffering the intermediate result, which will allow your program to be faster but in the native SQL, you don't have this table buffering capabilities. Now, when we come to the fourth point here, within the Open SQL, you don't have capability to utilize AMDP. Now, what is AMDP? AMDP are ABAP managed data procedures. So these are special type of procedure which are specific to HANA database, and this provide an excellent way to do code push down, where you are pushing your code into the HANA database for better performance. So they are specific to HANA database, and as they are specific to HANA database, so you will only find AMDP with HANA database. Now the AMDP is not present with OpenSQL because OpenSQL should be database independent and the AMDP are only HANA specific. Okay, now coming to the next point, within the OpenSQL, the client handling is automatic, which is your mandate field. So this mandate field which represent what client you are in. So sometimes you have client 100 or 800 or you are having 900. So these are common clients which you have within your SAP system when you work with SAP system. So handling of this client is automatically done. You don't have to pass this mandate field in case of update or in case of modify of the data, or even in case of select. In case of OpenSQL, you don't have to take care of it. The DBI layer automatically handles that for you. But in case of your native SQL, you have to manually take care of this mandate field. You have to take care of this mandate field as a normal column of the table, and you have to manually handle this within your code. And in case of OpenSQL, even if you don't take care of the mandate field or this client field, then the database interface layer will handle that for you. So that is one benefit with the OpenSQL what we have. Now, one more thing which you will see is that in OpenSQL, it basically uses the ABAP data dictionary to refer to structures, and it will not be able to identify anything which is not present within the ABAP dictionary. So within the ABAP dictionary, you have tables and you also have views like your CDS views. So those structures it have, and your native SQL statement on the other hand is referring to the actual tables which are present within the database for the structure. So that is a one more major difference. You will find that OpenSQL refer to the ABAP data dictionary, and your native SQL statement will be actually referring to the actual tables which are present in the database. Now the final question comes is, we have so many benefit of native SQL, and we also have major benefit of database independent capabilities of OpenSQL. So they both have their pros and cons and benefit. Now what to select? Now, as per the best practices, it is recommended to prefer the OpenSQL statement within your ABAP code, because the major benefit it provides is it is database independent, and also it has the buffering capabilities. And in the special scenarios where you don't meet those needs with OpenSQL, you should use or you can use the native SQL, like your AMDP. You have certain statements which are specific to those particular database, and also in case you need the capability of DDL. So those are certain special scenarios where you will require the use of native SQL, but in general, in your day-to-day programming activity as a ABAP developer, you should prefer OpenSQL based on the best practice. This is what is recommended. Okay, so enough about the theory and the theoretical aspect of OpenSQL. Let's go into code and see some hands-on. Hello and welcome back. Now within this section, we will prepare for our hands-on part. Now the first thing which we will do is we will create the tables. Now there are two tables which we will be creating. The first is the purchase order header table, and the second table we are going to create is the org table. Now these two tables will not be having exactly the same number of fields in which the purchase order header have or the org table have. We will be creating these tables, but we will be selecting few fields to put in our custom tables so that the examples which we are going to cover are simple to understand. Now the purchase order header and the org table, they will be having the org common, because in the purchase order header we have the org, and also in the org table we have the org. So there is a common field. Now this is not a foreign key relationship, but a common field which we will see the usage when we go for joins or when we go for the path expressions. So all that we will basically use this setup. Now within the basic part, we will just be having examples of purchase order header, and we will be seeing those examples. But for the advanced parts or advanced sections, we will be using also the org table. Okay, so let's go ahead and create these two tables in our SAP, in our shared SAP HANA instance. Okay, so to create the tables, I have to just right click here on the database tables and it will show me new database table. And if you're creating it for first time, you can right click on the package and say new, and from the others you can just say tables, and here database tables. So the first table will be ZPO head 24 head underscore 24 underscore 11. And here I'm going to say purchase order header, and next, and finish. Okay, so let's add few fields. So the first thing which I will do is make this client as not null, because this client is a key field, so it will be not null. Then I will have one more field here, which is purchase doc, and this is also going to be abap.char and 10 and not null. And the next thing which we will have is description, and this is again going to be of ABAP string and length as 128, and then we will have the status, and it is again going to be a abap.char of one length, and similarly we can have the priority, so priority, and again this is going to be abap character 1, and after that we are going to have the org information, and I can call it purchase underscore org. Okay, now the next thing will be your net price. Now net price is going to be a amount field, so I'm going to make it abap.cur 13 places number before the decimal and 2 places after the decimal. So that is how I'm going to represent this. And because it is a amount field, it will also require a currency. So currency, we will make it as abap.cuky, which is representation of the currency, and they need to be linked. So what I need to do is I need to add an annotation saying that this price currency is this currency. So the way to do it is semantic currency code and semantics.amount.currency code, and here I'm going to name the currency, and when I name, I need to also mention the name of the table and then the name of the field. That is how we can say that, okay, this amount currency is this currency in the line number 19. The next thing which we will have is the create date time, and this is going to be of time stamp. Now you can have your normal date or you can have the timestamp, so whatever you want you can use it. Now we will be using the timestamp in this example, and also we want to add one more information, that who created this purchase order. So what I'm going to also do is add the type of system user name. So the person who created the purchase order, that information also we are storing. And then the final thing is last changed timestamp. And the last stage timestamp also is going to be timestamp type. Now in this scenario, we are not considering all the aspect or all the fields of a purchase order header, but few selective fields which we are familiar with or which are quite popular. And we are trying to keep our example simple so that we are easily able to understand the syntax. Okay, so let me just arrange this in a nice readable fashion, and then we will activate this code. Okay, so let's activate this code, and once I activate the code, then we will have a database table created of ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11 in our shared SAP HANA database. And here also you can see that we have ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11. So if I right click here and say open with data preview, then currently we don't have any data, so it will come as blank. So what our objective will be to create also the org table and then add the sample data from our ABAP code. Okay, let's create the other table as well. So here in this time, I'm going to go for the shortcut. We will say new database table, Z purchase org underscore 24 underscore 11. And in the description, we can say org table. And let's hit next and finish. And here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to first make the client not null. Then I'm going to add a key field called org. So it will be the org information. And this is again going to be ABAP dot character of 4 length. And because it's a key field, I'm going to also say, okay, it's not going to be null value. So there should be some value here. And then we have the plant information, and the plant is going to be also character of length 20, ABAP.char 20. And finally, we are just going to also add the timestamp. So here I just can copy from the previous table definition and just put it here. Okay, so only 4 fields we are considering. The org table we have simplified a lot. The org here, which is the primary key, will be the same value as here the purchase org. This is not going to be a foreign key, but we will see those examples in the advanced section of SQL, where we will be showing the joining and all the relative operations. Okay, let me activate this table. And once I activate this, and I can find this here, the table which newly is created, and I can just say, okay, data preview. And because it's not having any data, so we are seeing nothing here. Okay, I'm going to come back to my main code, and here I have a sample data loader, and there are certain sample data which we have hard coded for our example. And what we are going to do is we are going to insert that. So we have some 7 records of purchase order header, which we will put in the purchase order header table. And there are some 3 records which we will put in our org table. So these are sample random data which we have created for this particular example. We have to just change the table name here based on the newly created table we have. So ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11 and ZP org underscore 24 underscore 11. Now the same thing we have to also do in the definition, where we are creating this internal table with the data keywords, and we have to just change the data types of this particular table which we just created. Okay, once we save everything, we are going to then call this particular method within our main. And once we have that method in the main and we execute this ABAP code, then this method will create an internal table with the sample data. And then based on those internal table, it will try to insert those values to our newly created table. So let's try to do that. We will activate the code, and we are going to just run this code. Now, because we have not used out.write anywhere just to have a confirmation, what we have to do is we have to come back to the data preview to verify if the data is actually loaded or not. So if I refresh here, then I can see that, okay, data is loaded. And also I can go to my header table here, and I have to right click and say open with data preview. And you can see that the sample data is present. Okay, so we have our sample data loaded into the database table. Now what we will do is we will go to our ABAP code and we will start with simple select. That is the first hands-on we will try. One thing we will do before we start doing any kind of development is arrange it in a proper fashion so that all the information are visible to us in a single screen. So we will just minimize this project explorer view. And what I will do is I will bring the table towards this right side, and both the table structure, I will just align one after other. And the data I will just bring below the table. So here, and also the org data, I will just bring it here. So that in the right hand side, we have definitions of the table, and below that we have the data. And in the left hand side, we have the ABAP code. And we can just reduce the right hand side view of the properties, which currently we are not using, because we will be using mainly the console to see the data which we get. Okay, so the first thing which we will do is we will try to write a simple select. So we'll say, okay, select all fields, and then we have to say, okay, from which table? So from this ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11 table, and I will say into, and when I say into, then I can put this data in a single line, or I can put it into a table. So let's try to put this into a table, and I will say, okay, put it into a table. Whenever I have to represent certain variable within my select, which is going to be present within the ABAP program scope, then I have to use this @. So I have to escape it with the @. And I'm going to create a data variable inline, or I'm going to create this table inline where the selection will be happening. So into table, we have to name this table purchase order header underscore table. So that is going to be the table which will be created. Now, by just having this select, we are basically going to have a table created, and all the data will be inserted to this particular table. Now because I have only 7 records, I will be executing this select. And to show you the data, we can just have a sci sub rc check after this. So I will say if sci sub rc equal to 0, then out.write, and in the out.write I can put this table, and else if it is not, then I'm going to say, okay, there is some error or no data. So sometimes if you don't get any data also, then the sci sub rc is also not 0. Okay, that's all. So I will activate the code and we will run this code. Now, if I run this code, then I can see the entire table getting selected. Now, what if I want to select only 5 records? Now, that is a better way to do this select star, because normally you might be having huge tables with millions of records, and you don't want to really select all the records and bring all the data to your ABAP application server unnecessarily. So it is much better if you are trying to do this kind of operation, then use the up to n number of rows, which can be how many rows you are interested in. So I'm interested in 5 rows. So I can just mention that up to 5 rows. So it will select the top 5 rows. Okay, so let me activate this code and run this code. Okay, so I have the top 5 row selected, and that is what got printed in the console. Now, the same thing I can also do if I try to bring this inline declaration here, and I say, okay, this PO underscore header underscore table is a type standard table of this ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11. Then I can also do that, and then I don't need to really create the data here inline, but I need to use this @escape to make the SQL understand that the PO underscore header underscore table is part of the ABAP code, not part of the select. Okay, so I can do the same thing, and if I try to activate the code and run the code, then I'm going to also get the same output. Okay, now the next thing is if I just need 2 columns. So if I just need the purchase document and description, so how will I do that? So I have to mention purchase doc, comma, and then the second column name or the field name. And once I do that, then it's going to just select these 2 fields. So let's try to see what happens. I'm going to just clear the console, activate and run. You can see that there are a lot of values which are empty, but we are getting purchase doc and the description. But one issue which you are seeing here, that the purchase doc is assigned to the client and the description is assigned to the purchase doc. Now why it is happening? Now because it is basically selecting this field, and the first field it is mapping the purchase doc, which is the client, and in the second field it is mapping the description. Now for some reason, if I say okay, I will go for the net price, then you might also see error. Now the net price is not compatible to the description data type because the net price is of type currency and the description is of type string. But in the previous case, the string was assigned to character, so that was okay. Internally the conversion was happening. But in this case, we are seeing the syntax error. You can see here that the purchase doc is not compatible to the net price. So what I will do to solve this is I will just replace this with the inline data keyword, and automatically what you will see that the table which will be created will be only having these 2 columns. So if I do that and let me activate and run the code, then you can see that the purchase doc and the net price are only the column which are part of the PO header underscore table column. There are instances where you might have seen the use of end select. So there might be code where you have seen this end select and select and select, why they are basically used. Now when you use select and end select, the data are processed one by one. So for example, if I try to change this example and I just remove this up to 5 rows, and what I do is I say select purchase doc and description. So let me just take this column name description from the table into my data, and here when I remove the table keyword, then this is treated as a single work area, or what you call as a line or a single row of the table. So I will say PO header underscore line, and then I can have this end select after the if. So if this particular select is successful and we have something in the line or the data is red, then we basically will be having this as a single line red. And I can just add one more out.write here, and I can say okay, row red, and let me activate this and clear the console and run the code. So what you see here in the output is we have the first row red, which is the one purchase doc and the product description as product A, and then we have the row red printed, which is this line number 153, and then we have again the second line which got printed and then the row red, and similarly all the row are one by one red. Now, within this case, what happens is your database interface is going to read the data in packets, and these packets are then passed to the application server, and the application server is then reading those results one by one. That's why you will be able to work on individual lines one by one. You can read those. You don't have to really get the data in a table and then loop at the table and do certain operation, where you are basically having certain processing to be done within that particular block. So I can just access here the purchase document number and maybe do certain operation with it. So that can be the case. Okay, and I can also specify in this Select-Endselect what can be my packet size. So I can specify after this into data the packet size in which the data is to be read. So if I say 2, then 2 records at once will be read from the table by the database interface. Now in this case, we are getting a syntax error because the PO_header_line is a single line, and when we mention packet size, then we have to basically also say that it should be the table. So I'm just going to change it to table, and now the PO_head_table will be a table, and when I do the out.write, then you can see that two rows will be read in a single Select-Endselect instance. So let me just clear this and activate and run, and you can see that at a single time 2 rows are read, and once 2 rows are read, then we have this row read printed from the out.write. So the Select-Endselect in short can be used to get the data from the database and loop at it and do certain processing. But with the new ABAP 7.4 and 7.5 syntax, you will see a lot of capabilities of internal table out of the box. So even if you don't want to go for Select-Endselect, that is okay. We do have a lot of new features part of the ABAP code which can make the looping and handling and creation of new internal table out of an existing table much easier and simple. So now if I have a select where I say, okay, select all the fields from the ZPO head_24_11 into table PO_header_table, and this is the table which we just created in line here, and we say okay up to 2 rows, and I'm just going to create the table first, and then I'm just going to then copy this select, and if I say okay, if this table already have certain data, then next time I don't create a new inline internal table. I just want to append new records to that particular table. I can basically say, instead of into, I can just say appending. So this is going to append the new rows. So in the second time, if I get 3 rows and we append this to the same internal table, and let's see what we will get. So let me clear the console, activate and run the code. And you can see that we have the first 2 records which are already part of the internal table, which was read from the first select. And again, after that, we read the 3 records. And when we read, we are not basically reading from where the first select left. We are reading it again from the first column. So therefore, the 1 and 2 purchase document rows are selected in the first select and put in the PO header table. And in the second select, we are selecting again 1, 2, 3 purchase document rows and then appending into the same table. Okay, so this is where we can use the same internal table and do append operation instead of creating again a new table. Now the next thing which we will see is how we can filter a particular table and only extract a particular record based on certain condition. To see that, let me just remove the second example from here. I can add a where condition just after the from. So select star from the ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11 table. And then here I can say where purchase doc equal to 1. And once I do that, then it will only get single record where purchase doc is 1, because the purchase doc is the primary key or the key field here. So let me try to activate this, and I can clear the console and run the code. And you can see that we have this table where single row is there, and this is having the purchase doc as 1. Now I can also read it into a single line instead of table. So I just can get rid of this table keyword, and this PO header table, instead of table, this should be that PO header line. So this will be a single line. And also let me get rid of this second line. Now we're getting a syntax error here. Now the first thing which we need to get rid is up to 1 rows. So if I just get rid of this, because we are expecting a single line, so we don't need to say that, okay, we need to get 2 rows or up to 2 rows. So if I read the problem, what the problem we have is it is expecting a end select. So what I can do is I can just add a end select to close the select, because we are selecting the data into a single line, and because we have the where clause and it's applied to the primary key, so it's just going to read a single row if we found it. So that is the first way to do it. So if I activate this and if I try to just run this, so let me clear the console and run the code, and we see that single record. Now the other way to do is, instead of the end select, I can just get rid of this end select, and I can say select single star, and this is going to just select single record. And because it's select single, we are not using the end select, and we will be able to get the data into a line. And the benefit of getting the data into a line is that you don't need to then create one more variable to access the independent component. So I can just access the purchase document if I just want to access the purchase document, and I can also access the net price. So I can just write that. Okay, so if I just activate this code and run this after clearing the console, then you see that I have the 1 and 10 written in the console, because for the purchase order 1, the purchase document number is 1 and the net price is 10. Okay, so this was some of the basic example of the select. Now in the next section, we will see some of the basic example of inserting data into database table. Hello and welcome back. Within this section, we are going to see how to use the insert statement within our ABAP code. Now, we have already seen the example where we are inserting the sample data. That is one of the example of insert. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically also try to reiterate the same thing, but this time I'm going to also add few more details so that this section will be meaningful. Okay, the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to insert data into my org table. Now, the reason why I'm doing the insert in the org table, because there are a few fields and we don't have to type much. So let's get started. So the first thing which I will do is I will create a org table, and this will be a purchase org. So I'm going to say purchase org table and type standard table of the org. So that is there, zp org underscore 24 underscore 11. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to also get the timestamp. So with get timestamp field, I can basically get the timestamp or the current timestamp. So current timestamp. So this will be also required. And finally, I'm going to just use the internal table and populate the internal table with the value keyword. So I can have multiple rows here. So the first thing I will put here is the org, and there are already org 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add org 4 and then plant I can say, okay, this is plant 4 and the last change timestamp equal to the current timestamp. Okay, so that is what we have. And let me bring it to the next line and also just align the previous code as well. Is visible now, the entire row, and this is one row. I can similarly have other rows as well, and I will just change the value to org5 and org6, and here as a plant 5 and plant 6. So 3 records I'm going to add, and to add these 3 records I can call insert then their table name, which is zporg_24_11 from table, and whatever the internal table we want to be used for the insertion, we can just mention there after the @ or the escape. And if this is successful, then the size sub-rc will be 0, and I can just use the outer right and say, okay, record written. Okay, and that's all. And if not, then I can say, okay, error or no data. Okay, so this is a basic simple example, which in the case of data loading also we have seen. We are just kind of using that as a first case for the insert. And if I activate and run the code, then it's saying record written, and I can refresh here, and there are 3 more records which are added. Now, what I can also do is I can just take this entire table. I don't need to create any internal table. I can just use it here after the escape, and I can have a parenthesis, and here I can just put the value, and this will also work, because then this is going to be an internal table after the value, and it will be then used for the insert. I can get rid of all this declaration above here, and also this statement where I'm inserting the data into the internal table. Okay, so this statement will also work, but if I run this, I will get an error because we have to change the primary key here. It will not allow duplicate org number. So if I try to execute it, it will give me error, but I can change it to 7, 8, and 9. And here also plant 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so let's activate this code and run this code. And we got a record written, and if I refresh this table here, then we have 7, 8, 9 also plant information written. Okay, now one more thing is that because the plant is having the length as 4, so here the org8 and org7, they are 4 character length maximum which is allowed. Now it can also happen that you say, okay, I want to add a org10, and that is one record which I want to add, and here the plant will be the plant 10. Then it should work because the org10 will be added. But what happens is, because we have a restriction that org should be of only 4 character, it will only consider the first 4 character, which is org1. And because org1 record is already existing in the database table, then it will throw you an error, and the error will be that the duplicate record exists. Okay, so let me activate this and run this code. And this time I'm going to clear the console and run the code. And here I'm not getting anything because sometimes you have to switch to the debugging perspective just in case there are runtime errors. And if I add a breakpoint in the line number 163 where if is there and refresh this breakpoint and just try to run the code again, then I see a DBSQL duplicate key error, and this is a runtime error, and it's basically coming from the insert. Now, why it is coming? Because the org10 will be considered only till org1 because the length is 4. So you have to be careful also that when you try to insert records, you're not inserting any duplicate records. And also sometimes because of the restriction of the data type, it can happen that the data can be of a duplicate nature, what we are seeing here in the current scenario. Okay, so To change this, I can make it org 10, and that will work because that's a unique value, and also it satisfies our org data type. And also you can change the type here if you feel that okay, the current data type is not accepting my data. So you can also do the changes in the structure here, and it will also allow them. So if I make it org 5, then also it will work. Okay, so if I try to activate this table here, and if I try to insert org 10 and activate, and I will get rid of this debugging point and switch back to the ABAP perspective and run the code, then you can see that record written. And if I refresh my tables here, then org 10 is also present here. Okay, so this is one thing to be careful about to maintain the uniqueness of the primary key. Now, what we have done so far is we have seen how to insert data from a table. Now you can also insert data from a single line. So to do that, you have to just get rid of this table keyword, and here I can just get rid of this extra parentheses. So this will be considered as a single line. So I can just use this, and that's all. So what we are trying to do here, we are using this single line, and we are basically inserting this single line or single row or a work area into the table. So here I need to make it org 11 because the org 10 is already present. It will give me a duplicate record error if I don't do that. So let's clear the console, save, activate, and run. If I run the code, then you can see that record written. And if I refresh the table here, then I will also have the line added to the table. Now, if you want to also have this line as a separate data, then you can also do that and purchase org underscore line, and I will say okay, like line of the purchase org table, and this way I can create a single line, and then I can just use this to assign value, and once I assign value here, then I can just replace this part after the escape with this particular purchase org line. I will add the purchase org 12 in this case because the 11 is already present. Save, activate, and run, and you see that record written. And if I try to refresh the table, then it will show me the new record added. Okay, so this is how you use insert, and these are some of the basic examples of using insert. Hello and welcome back. In this section, we are going to see the use of update. Now, update is used to update an existing record in the database table. So let's try to first create a simple update. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this purchase order header table. I'm going to select the first purchase order with the purchase document number 1. And we are going to change the net price here from 10 to maybe 30. So what I can do is first let me write a select. So I can say select single star all the fields from the table, which is z purchase order head underscore 24 underscore 11. And I will also have this where clause where purchase document is equal to 1, and I'm going to put this line into the newly created variable here as PO update underscore line. Okay, so this is the line or the row or the work area where we are getting the first record. And what I'm going to do is if the size of RC is equal to 0, which means that if we successfully are able to read, then I'm going to change here the net price to 30. And also because as we are changing the net price to 30, I'm also going to update this last chain timestamp, and I'm going to take the current timestamp. So I'm going to also get the timestamp from get timestamp field and create a current timestamp variable, and here I'm going to just equate this to the current timestamp of the line. So I can use this PO underscore update line and last chain timestamp equal to the current timestamp, because we are updating here, so I'm also updating the last chain timestamp. Okay, now the update will be basically having the syntax of update, and then we will tell okay what table we want to update, and this is the database table ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11, and we can pass a work area or row or a column to refer, and this will be this PO underscore update underscore line. So it's going to refer this particular line, and based on the primary key it will select in which table record I want to have update done. So based on this line it will change all the other fields which are different. So the changed field are the net price as 30 and the last chain timestamp as the current timestamp. We are changing these two fields. So it will basically pick those changes from this line and it will update the database record. Okay, so I'm just going to also have a size sub RC check after that. And I'm going to say and if, and here I'm just going to say update done. Okay, so let me clear the console, save, activate, run, and activate and run. And you can see that update done is what is getting printed in the console. And if I refresh my table here, then for the purchase doc 1, I am seeing the net price as 30. And also the last chain timestamp is also changed to the current timestamp where we are recording this section. Okay, so one question you might be having is why I need to do select. Can I have a single line created with a value keyword, and can I pass that directly to the update? And you can certainly do that. So let's try to see how to do it. So I'm going to just delete this particular select, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sample data, because then we have to type those things. So what I will do is I will create a line here, and I will say PO line, and in this case I will use the value keyword, and whatever the data I have copied I'm just going to put it here. And in this case I'm going to make the purchase document as 1, and I'm just going to pass the net price as 30, and also the last chain timestamp I'm going to also get this from the current timestamp, and I'm going to pass this here. Okay, and what we have is a single line. Now this line we can just pass to the update. So if I try to just simplify the code here, get rid of this and bring my update outside, then just arranging the code and get rid of this and if, which is not required. And what I can do here is I can just use this PO underscore line. After update the table name from PO underscore line. Now we are getting an error because when we use the value keyword and also the data keyword, there is no way for ABAP to understand, okay, what is the type of this PO underscore line. So what we have to do is we have to tell that, okay, the PO underscore line is of type a line of the table. For that, I have to create an internal table, PO underscore table, type standard table of my table ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11. And then I can say PO underscore line is a like line of this particular PO underscore table. And then I can just use PO underscore table. I don't have to define here. Okay. And the update is here. Now, if I try to update my table based on this line where I have changed the net price to 30. Now the net price is already 30, so better make it 70 so we can see the changes here. Okay, so let me activate and run this code, and I will clear the console and run the code. And you can see that update is done. And if I refresh the table, then you see that the purchase document is 1 and you have the net price as 70. Now, one thing you might have noticed here that the remaining fields which we don't want to actually update are also overwritten. So it's blank. Previously in the description, this was product A and status 1, priority 1, and all that is missing here. We just wanted to change the net price to 70 for the purchase doc 1, and we really don't want to actually overwrite all these things. So you have to be careful while using the update that when you use this update, then it will overwrite all the existing column if you don't pass them. So how to fix this issue we will see in a moment. But before that, I would like to also show you that, okay, how you can actually get rid of few of the code which we have written extra here. And that is, I can directly pass this value in this PO line here, and after this escape, and let me put the parentheses, and inside that the value hash I can pass. And once I do that, then it automatically knows that which structure I'm talking about. So I can get rid of all this extra line of code, which is not required. So just get rid of all this thing. And you have to just check if the proper parentheses are in place. And this is also possible. Now, this time I'm going to change the purchase doc 2. And let's see if it will give the same error. And purchase doc 2, here I'm going to change the net price and also the current timestamp. These two fields I'm passing, and the remaining fields I'm not passing. And let me check what will happen. So activate and run this code. And if I do that, update done is what we get in the console. And if I refresh the table, I can see that both in the purchase document 1 and 2, only the purchase document number and the net price and this last chain timestamp is intact. Remaining all things are wiped out. And also here the client, as the client handling is automatic, in the Open SQL, the client is present. Now, one final thing which I would like to show you, the variation is, instead of the line, you can also pass the table in a similar fashion. You just have to write the table keyword. And for that, I have to pass the table here. So I'm just going to consider, okay, so this is the first row. And then after that, I'm going to have the second row. Okay, so that is also the way to pass the table. Let me just arrange the code. And so the syntax is update table name from, and here table keyword, we need to add table, and whatever the table we want to pass, we are just passing it here. Okay, so we might be missing one parenthesis of the value, and therefore we are seeing that extra error. Okay, so this is the syntax, and let me try to now change the purchase document 1 and 2 again. And here I'm just going to pass the net price as maybe 90, and here net price as maybe 40. So the current timestamp also we are changing or passing, so it will be also changed. Okay, so let's see what will be the final result. So activate the code and run the code, and we see update done. And if I try to refresh the table, then I see that 90 and 40 changes are done, and also the current timestamp would have been updated for the purchase document 1 and 2 row. So till now what we have seen is how we can do update from a table and also from a line. Now the issue which we need to fix here is that if you want to update a particular record and we don't want to pass all the other columns, and we just want to pass the column which is having the new value and maybe a filtering condition. So what is the right way or the right? So till now what we have seen is how we can do update from a table and also from a line. Now the issue which we need to fix here is that if you want to update a particular record and we don't want to pass all the other columns and we just want to pass the column which is having the new value and maybe a filtering condition. So what is the right way or the right approach to do that? Because in this case, when we just pass these three fields, then it is basically overwriting all the other fields. So what is the right way or right approach? Before I do that, let me just try to reset the data. I will just copy this to data records and I'm going to just reset the data so that our data is as it was when we first inserted the data, and the current timestamp also I'm just going to put it here. Okay, so activate and run the code, and if I refresh, and we see that the purchase documents have been resetted to the default which we initially inserted the data. Now the right approach to do update is, let me just get rid of this, is to have this update from the table name, and the table is ZPO head underscore 24 underscore 11. And after that I will say set, and I will pass the particular column which I want to be changed. So I will say, okay, change the net price to 70, and I will change the net price of this purchase document 1. So I will also have a where clause. So I will say where the purchase document number equal to 1. Okay, so this is what I will say, and I can arrange this in a readable fashion. So I'm just going to align set and where, and it's much more readable now. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm just changing the net price to 70 where the purchase doc is 1 with this set keyword, and let me activate it and run the code. So clear the console and run the code, and you see that update done is what is written. And if I try to refresh my database table, then I can see that the purchase doc 1 net price has been changed and remaining value are also intact. They are not actually changed. And if you want to also change the last chain timestamp with it, then I can also just use that last chain timestamp, this current timestamp, which I will escape with the @ character. Okay, and there should be a comma between both the fields. Okay, let me also change this to 90 because 70 is already there. So we'll know that, okay, this update has worked. Okay, activate it and run the code. And we see that update is done. And if I refresh, then you can see that net price is changed, and also the last chain timestamp will be changed to the current timestamp where we executed the code. Okay, so this is how you target few specific fields for update and not overwrite all the fields or not have to use select before the update. Now you might be having a question that is there a way in which I can generically write this thing? Because now what if in a ABAP code I want to make this generic? So what I mean to say is that I don't know that this net price need to be changed to value 90 and the where condition is of 1. So what if these are something which I get dynamically in the code? Now how will I do that, or how will I use the update? So you can also pass a string after the set. So what I can do is I can say, okay, data, and here update fields, and I can just make it a string, and I can just say, okay, net price equal to 90, and then I can just pass this after the select. So once I pass this after select, then I have to just put it inside the bracket where the parentheses beginning and end spaces need to be removed. And also I can have a purchase document passed to me generically. So I can say PO to update if I'm getting it generically. So if it is 1, then I can also use that with the escape. So I can say @PO to update. So this syntax make the set keyword fields generic, and let me try to change this net price to maybe 100 so that we see the changes here. And save, activate, and run. Clear the console and then run, and you see update done. And if I try to refresh the data here, then I see that net price is changed to 100. Okay, so this is also the way to do this. Now you can also say, okay, how can I pass the other last chain timestamp? So what I can do is I can just have comma here. Let me just take this last chain timestamp, and I can just put it here, the name last chain timestamp equal to, and in this case I can use the curly braces and put the current time, and then in this way the net price and the last date timestamp both are part of this set. And if I try to clear the console, save, activate, and run this, so activate it. Now because the net price is 100, then I need to make it to a different value, maybe 120, so that we see this changes clearly. And also it is 27, 11, 35, 11. Let's see if the changes happens. Let me just activate and run the code, and you see update done. And if I refresh the table here, then you can see that the last chain timestamp is also updated, and the net price is also updated for the purchase document 1 record. Okay, so this is the way where you can selectively update a particular record based on some where condition. And what you can also do is you can update a particular field. If it is integer or decimal, then you can consider the same column or the field, and you can increase the value as well. So if I try to increase or decrease this to maybe 20, then this is also possible. So if I comment this line and say, okay, net price equal to net price plus 20, where the purchase document equal to the PO underscore to underscore update, which is having 1 value, then it should change to 140. So let's try to see if it is happening. So activate, clear the console and run, refresh the table, and here we can see that net price is changed. Okay, so these are some of the variation of the update. We first saw how to update a particular table. We took one particular record with the select and then did some change on those record on few fields, and then we try to run that particular with the update. Then we saw how we can pass internal table for the update, and we saw that some of the fields were changed, but few of the fields were overwritten with the initial value. So to avoid overwriting the other fields, we use the set keyword with the where. Okay, so this was how you update records in your database with your update statement. Now in the next section, we will see the use of modify. Welcome back. Now in this section, we will see the use of modify. So in the case of modify, the records are updated if present within the database, and if they are not present, then they are inserted into the database. So this is the main difference between the modify and update. Within the update, you will use the update for just updating existing record or multiple records, but in case of modify, you are basically trying to update an existing record, and if those records are not present, then insert them as well into the database. So modify act as a update or and insert. So both these things together you can do with the modify. So this time I'm going to use the org table to demonstrate the example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this keyword modify the table name and from, and after from I can either pass a single line or either pass a table, and I can create this internal table, or I can use the value keyword to dynamically create this table. So this we have seen in the previous section also. So both of these examples separately I'm not going to show this time. I'm just going to use the value keyword, and the first thing is to show you how I can add a single line, and I'm just going to create a single line. The first thing which this org table will have is going to be the org, and I'm going to say here maybe org 15, and then I'm going to say plant as plant 15. Now we have already changed the length of org to 5, so we will not get an error because it will be considered as org 15, not org 1. So if you have not done that in your example, you can also change this org to the length 5, not length 4. Okay, and also finally the last change timestamp. I can just take this from here, the name last change timestamp equal to the current timestamp. So this is a single row, and if I pass this with my modify, then there will be new record inserted. So if I activate this code, now before that I just need to say here modify done and activate this code and run this code. Then you can see that modified done is getting printed in the console, and if I refresh the table, then you can see that org 15 is added as a new entry in my database table. Okay, now what if I would have passed here org maybe 11 and here plant maybe 41? What would be then the changes here? Will I be inserting a new record, or it will just update the org 11, because org here is the primary key, so this particular record will be changed, and here in the plant we will have the plant 41 as the value. So I will activate just to check what will happen. So because it is a modify, what it will try to do is it will modify if that particular record exists. It will try to find with the primary key, and if that record doesn't exist, then it will try to add it. So let me just show that. So here modified done is getting printed. If I run this code and if I refresh the data here, then here for the org 11 you can see that the plant value is changed to plant 41. Okay, now this is where I pass a single line. I can also pass an internal table. So what I can do is I can make it as internal table. So let me just copy all these fields, and here this is going to be first record, and similarly I can have one more record, and let me add it here as well. So this time I'm going to have a org 16. So this is a new entry, and the same org 11 I want to change the plant to plant 11. So one entry here is new entry, which is not present in the database. The org 16 primary key value is not present, and org 11 is an existing record. You have org 11. So let's see what will happen. So will it insert this org 16 and update this org 11 together? And now we are getting an error because we need to mention the table keyword after the from, because now with the value keyword it is a table, not a single line. So let me activate this, clear the console and run. And here if I run the code, I see modify done, and if I refresh my database table, then you see that the org16 is added and the org11 record is changed. So the modify basically gets us to update and also insert together in a single statement. So that is a benefit or the usage of modify. Now, one thing here is important to be mentioned is that when we have the update or modify or this insert, then there is a database lock which is placed, and this database lock will not allow other statements to be executed. And once this update, modify or insert changes in the database have happened, then that is called the commit. So when it is committed, then it will release that lock, and if some of the statement or all the statement went into error, then it will basically do the rollback. So it will try to get back to the previous state, and after the rollback you have the database lock removed so that the other statement can execute. So database lock removed, so that is a state. So commit or rollback, and after that only database lock is removed. So these are some of the function which happens internally in the database to maintain data consistency. Okay, so till now we have seen the usage of insert, update, and now we have also seen the usage of modify. Now in the next section we will see the usage of delete. Now delete basically deletes multiple rows or single rows from a database table. So when I use this statement delete from the database table, then it will try to delete all the records of the database table. So you have to be very careful when you use delete without specifying any particular where condition of which row to be deleted, because it will basically delete the entire table. So if I try to run this, and by delete means that it is going to wipe out the data, not the table structure. So I'm going to just say here in the out.write deleted, data deleted. Okay, so let me activate the code and run it. So clear the console and run it, and you can see data deleted got printed in the console. And if I refresh the table, then there is nothing here. All the records are deleted. So you have to be very careful while dealing with this particular statement here, delete from the table name. Now let me just reset the data. So what I will do is I will basically delete both the table data so that I can run my data loader. So I will delete both the table, wipe out all the data, and then I'm just going to call this method data underscore insert underscore sample, which is the initial data loader method. And it's not going to actually give us any return or will not print anything, just the insertion will happen after the deletion of both the tables. So it is going to be resetting the table. So you can see that both the table data will be reset. Okay, so now we have reset because we initially deleted all the data from the table. Okay, so coming back to the delete, we have seen the usage of delete from table name, which is a statement which you should use carefully. Now the second scenario is if you are trying to delete a particular record with the where filtering criteria. So you can have a where clause and you can filter out based on the column. So if I try to take this org and say delete the record where the org is org1, then it's going to delete just the first row where the org, which is the primary key, is org1. So if I run this, then you see data deleted printed in the console, and if I refresh the table, then that particular record is deleted where the org is org1 from the table. What next we will see is if I don't use the primary key and I try to use any other field. So for example, if I use this plant column and if I say where plant equal to your plant 2, So if it is uniquely able to identify that particular record, it will also delete in that case. So if I try to activate and clear the console and run, then you can see that delete from the table name where plant equal to plant2. If I write that, then it also deleted that particular record. And it can also happen that you want to delete multiple fields. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first insert few records which are as per the new examples which we want to demonstrate. So let me just take this table and I'm just going to put it after the @ here, the escape character, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just insert this record and also get this timestamp and put it here. Okay, so this is new records, and let me also have this plant as maybe PL3, and if I try to add some more record, maybe org4 as PL, and maybe org5, and here we will have org5 and PL5. Okay, so these records I want to insert into the database, and for now just comment this delete and activate. And now if the data is inserted, we will get the data deleted in the console, but we will refresh and check. So let me run this code. Now we are getting a dump, it seems, because we are not getting anything printed in the console because the org3 is duplicate. So we can just get rid of this or comment this particular line, and here we can say data inserted now before activating, and activate, clean the console and run. And once I activate, then I get data inserted. Let me refresh the table and we see few records getting added. If I click here in the org column header, then the data is sorted as per the org. Now what I can also do is I can delete the values where this PL is present, and if I now get rid of this insert and just try to focus on this delete, how can I just delete this org4 and org5? And if I don't know in advance that the PL plant names are present in org4 and org5, then what I can also do is I can say delete from the table name where plant equal to, and here I can use the wildcard and say okay, PL, and I can use the underscore here. So the underscore represents single character, which can be any character, and if you want to mention multiple character here, then percentage is what will be used. So these are the wildcard, and if I try to delete all the records where the plant is with the pattern PL and followed by any number of character, and if there is a single character after the PL which I need to just delete those record, then I can also mention PL and then underscore. So if I try to activate it, and here I have to say data deleted and activate now and clear the console and run the code, then we are getting an error here. Now it is because that instead of equal to we have to mention here like. So then if I try to activate and run the code, then you see that data deleted got printed. And if I refresh the table here, then you see that both the record where the plant was PL4 and PL5, the pattern was PL and then there was single character that got deleted. So we can use the where, and we can also, based on certain pattern, delete certain record. Now you have to be careful with the delete, because once the data records are deleted, then you will not be having access to that. So you have to be careful with the delete. Now I can also pass a internal table or a single line using which the delete can work. So the syntax of that will be delete table name, and here I will get rid of this where, delete table name from, and after that I can use the escape to pass a single line. The escape should be followed with a parenthesis, and here I will say value, and if I say org equal to maybe org1. So what it will try to do is it will basically take this line or consider this line, and based on the primary key it will pick the record and delete those. So I can activate this and run this code, and you see data deleted got printed in the console, and see if the org1 is deleted, and you can see that the first record got deleted. Now I can do the same thing here with the table, and what I can do is I can have multiple rows here, and one row will have org1, and the second row will have maybe org2, and the third row will have the org as org3, and we have to add also after the from the table keyword. So this way what we'll try to do, it will try to find org1, org2, org3 in the field or the column org, and it will try to delete those 3 record. And we know that the org1 is not there, but the org2, org3 are there. Here the operation will be a little tricky because this particular record is not found. Then we will have the size sub rc as not equal to 0, but will be set to 4 because it will not be able to find this record, but it will still be able to delete the other 2 records which are passed from the internal table using the value keyword with the delete. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically debug this particular statement. I'm going to just activate the code, put my debugging point before the size sub rc here, and if I switch to the debugging perspective, refresh the debugging point and run the code, then we will be coming to the size sub rc here. Now the size sub rc value is set to 4, but there is another variable which we should be interested in, which is your scidb count. So if I just write scidb cnt db count, then you see that the value is 2. So the scidb count is a system variable which keep tracks of how many rows or records that were affected by the SQL statement. If 2 records were deleted in this case, then the db count value is 2. If 10 record, if you are using a select, then if the 10 records were selected, then the db count would be 10. So how many rows were affected with your SQL, that particular number of rows count it keeps. So because the db count is 2, by this db count you can keep track that 2 records were affected. So in this internal table there are 2 entries which successfully got deleted from the table. So if I try to just refresh this table, then till now the commit is not done, so I have to just complete this execution. I'm going to get error or no data because the size sub rc will be 0, but still if I refresh this table, the records would be deleted, or the records are successfully deleted. So you have to also keep track of scidb count when you are passing the table with the delete. If some of the entries within the internal table are not found with the primary key and are not deleted, then you will still be getting the size sub rc as not 0, but the scidb count will tell you the truth in this case. So this was how to use delete in OpenSQL. So we saw few different scenarios. Hello and welcome back. Within this section, we will see the summary of the current section, what we covered. We started with the OpenSQL discussion, then we saw the difference between OpenSQL and the native SQL, in a theoretical perspective. Then we saw the basic operation of selection, insertion, modification, and deletion of the data from our database table using Open SQL written in ABAP. So now we have got a basic understanding or familiarity. Now the scope of Open SQL is quite big, so we have to dedicate a separate new course just for Open SQL, because we have a lot of statements within the select which one can use within the ABAP code, and also with the 7.4 and 7.5 syntaxes, you have new updates which are provided to the Open SQL. For example, now you have the capability to also use Open SQL with CDS. You have the path expression. So all that feature currently we have with the Open SQL. So that requires a dedicated course in itself, because the scope of this is quite large. So with this, we have come to the end of this particular section. And if you are interested in exploring more or learning more of Open SQL, then I will highly recommend the Open SQL with ABAP course.